Kyrie Irving has until June 29th to decide whether or not he will opt out of his contract with the Nets and become a free agent. His running mate, Kevin Durant, is under contract through 2026, and the pair have been inextricably linked since forming their partnership in 2019. So this gets interestinger and interestinger. And speaking of interesting, oh, there you are. Chris Canty is over here. Brian Windhorst and Woj are with us here again today with the draft coming up tonight. Woj, you had a big story yesterday. For those who haven't seen it, what is the very latest on Kyrie, KD, and the Nets?
Well, Greeny, listen, obviously Kyrie Irving has until the middle of next week to decide on that player option in his contract. Now, just because he opts out of the deal doesn't necessarily mean he's leaving the Nets. He can still negotiate an extension. He can actually negotiate a higher number than the $36 million that he's owed if he opts in. And listen, his options are limited in the marketplace. The Lakers, the Knicks are certainly focuses for him, but all the Lakers could offer him is their $6 million exemption. So he'd have to be willing to take as much as a $36 million pay cut for next year to leave Brooklyn. And essentially, the Nets want to do a shorter deal with Kyrie Irving, something that gives them protections based on perhaps games played. He has not played and nor been available as much as they would, of course, liked him to have been the last couple of years. Kyrie Irving wants a long-term max contract, and certainly, you know, a big part of this decision, these negotiations, are built around how it impacts Kevin Durant. He wants Kyrie Irving back. He understands that with him and with a healthy team, this is still a championship contender. And the Nets do have concern, and rightfully so, that if Kyrie Irving leaves, would Kevin Durant ask for a trade? And with 4 years left on his deal, certainly, he is committed to the team. He signed long-term. But also, listen, there's some concern if you're Kyrie Irving also, that the fatigue that others have felt around him and the drama that has surrounded him, that at some point Kevin Durant can feel some of that fatigue too. But it is really a line the Nets are trying to walk this week to get a deal done with Kyrie Irving, find some common ground there that keeps this team together and does not put them in a position where potentially, Kevin Durant's desire to be there becomes questioned.
It is so fascinating, guys, because, speaking of a league filled with drama, the Nets, who are the co-favorites, according to Vegas, to win the Eastern Conference next year, could also just get blown up as we know them in the next week. Those are the two different sides of the pendulum on this thing here. And Wendy, you and I were talking on the phone this morning. If indeed, let's just live in a world where Kyrie were to entertain becoming an unrestricted free agent, some might think, oh my goodness, teams would be knocking down his door. The whole league will come running to try and get a player of that caliber. But we understand all the question marks that come with him. So what would that look like?
So as far as I can tell, as I talk to people around the league, there's no teams making moves right now to try to clear space, to try to make a path to give Kyrie Irving a big contract. The team at the top of that list would be the New York Knicks, and they are investigating making moves to get a point guard, but it's either trading up to try to draft Jaden Ivey or clearing additional room to go after Jalen Brunson in free agency next week. It is not Kyrie Irving at the top of their wish list. When the Nets decided to take this path, they were aware of Kyrie Irving's statements at the end of the season, which is he planned to be back in Brooklyn. They realized that that's what his choice is. The rest of the league heard that too. They know that Kyrie's intentions in looking elsewhere is really to apply pressure to the Nets, not that he wants to leave anywhere. So this really may come down to Kyrie's willingness to actually opt out and to try to canvass the market, to show up in Los Angeles on June 30th. To hint that he wants to be a Laker or something like that. But really, the Nets are taking a calculated risk. They knew that there was a worry with Durant. None of this has taken them by surprise. They're trying to play their leverage. Kyrie's trying to play his.
Yeah, I mean, what an endlessly fascinating situation. Chris Canty, you host the radio show Coast to Coast and are very attuned particularly to the situation here in New York, thus Brooklyn. What is your perspective on all of this? It is endless drama. I'm not sure exactly where it's going to wind up.
Well, Greeny, I find it awfully ironic that we're talking about Kevin Durant, who left an ideal basketball situation to come to Brooklyn, and now Kyrie potentially leaving an ideal situation, playing alongside one of the top 3 players in the league, and also having the benefit of playing for a franchise he grew up rooting for in his own backyard. So that to me is fascinating. But when you peel back the layers on this, I'm not sure that there's going to be another opportunity out there that's going to offer Kyrie the chance to play for a championship contender. When you think about the possibilities of going to the Lakers, it just seems like from a practical standpoint, there are too many hurdles for that job to actually get done. And so when I look at it, it seems like it's all a ploy for Kyrie Irving to exercise some degree of leverage over the Brooklyn Nets in order to get a contract extension that gives him the years that he wants without the stipulations. And I just don't think the Nets are going to get it to him. But what works in the Nets' favor is I don't think anybody else around the NBA is going to offer it to him as well.
Quickly, Woj, and again, you talk to literally everyone around the league every single day. Do people generally expect that Kyrie Irving will be back with the Nets next year one way or the other?
I think people do expect that Kyrie Irving returns just based on the economics of it and how big of a financial hit Kyrie Irving would have to take to leave. But, you know, he probably also surprised a lot of people with his willingness to lose $17 million last year in salary because he wouldn't get vaccinated. So there is precedent for him for leaving money on the table, but this is a lot of money. He also is losing a significant shoe deal, signature shoe deal. So as Chris said, Brian said, this is certainly very much of a leverage play. And Brooklyn knew when they entered into this and were not willing to go with a long max deal that Kyrie Irving could walk. And on some level, obviously, they have to be prepared for that fact. And so this will play out here in the next several days between the Nets and Kyrie Irving.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.